Hi there, I'm George Souza. I watch NCTV. I'm playing every Thursday at Maria's.
Welcome to Nevada County Snapshots. I'm your host, Cheryl Noble. Our beautiful corner of the Sierra Nevada foothills is rich with diverse natural beauty, one-of-a-kind landmarks, historic, charming towns, world-class cultural events, and so much more. Our program looks at all things grand and glorious in Nevada County. Why don't you come join me and discover or rediscover what's right here in our backyard. Hi, welcome. I'm Cheryl Noble, and we're so glad you can join us today on a very special tour to the North Star House, which is located just south of downtown Grass Valley and in the neighborhood of our acclaimed Nevada County Fairgrounds. And on my left is John Taylor. He is the board president of the North Star Historic Conservancy, and on his left is Peggy Levine. She is the executive director of the Conservancy. So thank you for being here. And John, let's start real quick as board president with the mission of the board to preserve and rehabilitate this beautiful home.
We're slowly working on it. It's going to be a long-term project. And we started out sealing up the property of the house so there wouldn't be any more damage.
Okay, good start.
And we've been working on the yards and put in a well and a few things. And the next project is to start working on the outside of the house.
Okay, great. A long-term project I can see. So, Peggy, one of the big projects that the Conservancy did was get a couple historical designations, which was very important to get. Tell us about those.
Well, I did try myself a few years ago, but then we connected with a wonderful, Polly Allen is a historical architect, and her application was much better than mine. And so we got through the state, and you know, a lot of Office of Historic Preservation people at the state level have been up here. This has been a fascination for years for them. They didn't want it to be gone, and they all know the site and they know the history of the house, but the application went through.
So now the designations that we have here at North Star is from the state, which is the Historic Resource Commission, Historic Resource Commission, and then also on a national level, it's the
National Trust.
National Trust. Okay. Well, that's a great introduction for us. So we're going to step inside, and we're going to pick up another tour guide along the way. Okay, we're now inside the North Star House, and along with Peggy, on my right is Rose Sponder. She's also a board member on the Conservancy, and her efforts are to help preserve and rehabilitate. Hi, Rose.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us and giving us the guide. I want to know a little bit about the famous Julia Morgan, who is the architect of this building.
Well, we are so lucky in this community to have a Julia Morgan house. This house was designed and built in 1905. Julia Morgan was our first licensed female architect in California.
Oh my gosh.
And she's becoming more and more recognized. If you haven't heard of her, you will hear more about her. We now have a Hall of Fame in California, and Julia Morgan was one of our first inductees, so she's certainly important.
Yeah, she was a pioneer.
She was.
Definitely.
And she was a big proponent of the arts and crafts style, and so this house is a really great example of her early arts and crafts.
We're standing in, we learned that where we did the intro wasn't really the front door, but this is a kind of a foyer, main central area. Was this a living room or just a parlor?
This is a living room. The other thing you have to remember about the house, the foots Arthur DeWitt Foote and his wife Mary Hallett Foote are also becoming a lot more significant, as is Julia Morgan. Arthur DeWitt Foote was an engineer, not quite schooled all the way through. He got a little tired of going to school. But he worked all over the West on mines and water issues and all, and this is his last stop in his career. So the house was built for the Footes to live in, and part of their job was to entertain investors in the North Star mine, and so this is a formal setting, the living room and especially the dining room. They had guest rooms upstairs.
I'm intrigued with the dining room. Let's kind of go this way. We're in the formal dining room with a nice big fireplace and a beautiful Bay Area type window, which have the traditional craft style looking to me windows. And the Footes, Peggy, you said lived here. What was his position with the mine?
He was the mine manager, and they lived in the house. Their children were pretty much grown. Their son lived here. The mine owner lived up on the hill behind here, and that was Billy, the Haig family. They lived in the Haig house, which they built in 1915. But along with the Bournes at the Empire Mine, the Haigs and the Bournes lived in San Francisco.
Okay.
They came up here now and again.
Oh.
But, they did not, the mine owners did not live here. And you have to think about the culture of the era 100 years ago. I mean, San Francisco was the place for the owners, the managers, the owners, the lawyers, the families, and here was the working area. So a lot of those people lived in San Francisco and came up here.
And so the Footes were here full time, and then the mine owner part time in the Haig house. What other buildings are on the property, and how big is the property, Rose?
The property that we currently have is about 14 acres, and it includes this house, the Haig house, like we set up on the hill. A lot of people who come to the growers market ask about the Haig house. If you see a beautiful little arts and crafts cottage,
Yes,
that's the Haig house.
We saw on the way on the way in.
And then we also have the original gardener's cottage and the assay office. So those are the existing buildings. We have foundations of buildings that no longer exist, such as the garage that was adjacent to the house and the original North Star cottage, which was the cottage that the superintendent or manager of the mine lived in before this house was built.
Does anybody live in the Haig or the cottage, the garden cottage now?
No.
Nobody is living on the property. About how many square feet is this house?
This house is roughly 10,000 square feet. Now, when we talk about the square footage, people see different numbers because at various points in the house history, there were additions, there were enclosures put onto the house. But the original footprint is about 10,000 square feet.
That's a good size house and a spectacular terrace that we're about to go out to see, okay? We're outside on the terrace, which Peggy was telling me before the program was actually the front entrance to the house. So there's a great, unique story about that. Tell us, Peggy.
Well, if you think the house was built in 1905 before automobiles, we have some great stories too about automobiles when they happened 10 years later, but or even 6 years later. But so this path here would have been a brick path all the way down to the road, and people would have been dropped off by their carriage and come up here. There was one door on this side into the mud room, and then you're in the house, you go in the living room or whatever. But just a few years later, cars came. Mm-hmm. So they built this beautiful garage, which we only have the partial wall of today, but they built a garage in the back, and there was a reflecting pool in the back in front of the kitchen. There was a pergola with plants, a little shady spot. The family added a little breakfast room later on because they didn't want to eat in the formal dining room all the time.
Right.
So they
It's
added
big.
a little breakfast room, and they started coming in what might have been the back door. But I think it really evolved, so the house was used differently as times changed.
And you had mentioned, too, that the original front door is this unique one with the diamond shape.
That's a freebie now. It's not that unique. It's just...
It's a nice design.
It's a nice design. It's not period appropriate, and we'll be working on that in the future. But our main goal in the last few years is to secure the house, and then also to secure it from from the nesting swallows.
Yes, they come back every year,
Yes,
you were
they do.
saying?
And they used to come back to all the rooms in the house, and now they're pretty much gone. But almost
Oh,
all
good.
of our windows, we have enough authentic windows that we have the historical history between the photographs and what we have. But most of our other windows are things we have found or donated, and they fill the space and they protect the house. The same with the roof. I mean, the roof was put on 7 years ago, and the first goal, there was tremendous water damage, especially on the second floor. So that goal was to protect what was here.
And the long-term plan is to really restore it to the original as much as possible.
Well,
look
yeah.
at this.
I mean, we like using rehabilitate or
Okay.
adaptive reuse, absolute restoration. You don't want to lose anything you have, and you want to keep all the records you can and try, especially on the first floor. We will be trying to say the bricks in the fireplaces, the fireplaces were damaged. So we're going to talk to Gladys McBean. They made all those bricks. We'll take samples down there. We'll take photographs. We've got some people interested in restoration of the fireplaces. So we'll go down there and we will do, that fireplace will come back and it will be right.
Yeah.
You know, we can do that.
On this terrace, before we go back inside, you can see that the grounds are spectacular. Rose was saying earlier about 14 acres. There's 2 buildings on here, but also the Bear Yuba Land Trust is on the property as well. And this property is in their trust, right?
Yes, this belongs to, used to be Nevada County Land Trust, and now it's Bear Yuba, and they're in the Gardener's Cottage. They're right on site here all the time, and they're
What a perfect office location for them.
Yeah.
Always to be inspired and hands-on taking care of their trust property. It's great.
no, it's good. And then the Conservancy has more of the responsibility about the house and the grounds, and you know, we have many, many stories. This place has many, many stories.
Okay, well, I'm anxious to go back in and see another part of the house, so let's go back in. We're now in Mary Halleck Foot's study, where she, I understand, did a lot of her writing. And this is a sweet little room and has some great unique features. So, Peggy, tell us about the characteristics in here and design features.
Well, this is one of the areas that we're hopeful about, that we were lucky to have saved. The house did suffer. It was empty for 15, 20 years, and it suffered a lot of degradation, paintball, painting, burning things, taking shelves. It lost a lot. But these 3 windows, as are several other in the house, are the real windows, and they had the small panes, and what separated the panes is called mullions. And if you run along here, you can feel where they were. So we will be able to restore these windows. Has kind of a unique center one, then one's coming down here. So all 3 of these we will be able, and that gives us, with photographs, which we have, and the evidence that here, it gives us things to work with. And in time, that can all be pulled back. This woodwork's all been cleaned up by volunteers, and you can see, and it's all. And one important thing about Julia Morgan too is, whenever possible, she used local materials. So as you looked out the window or you looked at the terrace, you'll see the rock pillars and all that. That's mine rock. They had a little train running up here.
So
from the mine.
just right around the area, they pulled materials.
Right.
So they were local.
You know,
before the
besides
movement came.
Besides her cement talents, you know, she was, but it's very, you know, it's all local. A lot of the wood is local. You know, there are things that they needed something else for. I mean, it's not that they didn't, but she was just really into using what was available.
And readily available and on the property, too. And one of the other features you were talking about are the fireplaces. They're in almost every single room, but you were telling me some of the unique things about the fireplaces and why those are, you're working to rehabilitate those.
They were all vandalized, and one of the stories goes they were looking for gold. I don't really know about that. But the bricks were all Gladdy McBean down in Lincoln, so we'll be looking at replacing the bricks. We've got some people. It's one of our focuses for raising money and volunteers in the near future is to get these back to, because once the fireplaces are back in these rooms, the rooms really start to feel like they're supposed to. And a couple of bookshelves here. Yeah. There was another point I wanted to make about Julia Morgan too, is she worked with her client. And if you look at Mary Halleck Foote's illustrations of living in Boise, Idaho, and the house that was built up there for them, it has a very similar terrace. So I am sure that the connections in the world were much smaller then, and I'm sure that she spent time with Julia Morgan and said, "I want this terrace," yes. And I like because there's a very similar look. Between the two houses.
And you were talking about her relationships. I did read that she had very strong relationships with her clients, and one of her more famous pieces that she did, buildings, was the Hearst Castle, right. Also the Fairmont in San Francisco, and one of the success stories about the Hearst Castle was her relationship with Hearst, in terms of the working relationship, sitting with him, understanding what he wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that was a train ride down every weekend from San Francisco all the way to San Luis Obispo, and then getting to the castle and then listening to him. And I collected another 500 objects from somewhere, and we got to redo this room. But she did
dedication.
She did work with her clients. So her architecture doesn't have some of the consistencies that some architects do. I mean, this is definitely a greenhouse. I mean, you can tell that. You can't always tell that from her work because she was, what do you want to use the house
The
for?
Personality of the client coming through. Yeah. So we've got a few more minutes. Let's see what's left in the North Star house.
Okay, so Peggy had mentioned the many stories of the house, and one thing we don't want to neglect before we go in is the horticultural history of this house and these grounds. Mr. A.D. Foote was an avid horticulturalist, and he put a lot of effort, labor, and his energy and creativity into the grounds. We have a lot of historic plants here. I'm standing in front of a 100-year-old magnolia. It's a columnar variety magnolia. It looks a little unusual for people who are used to seeing these wide branching trees. We also have a 100-year-old tulip tree just to my left. We have Mr. Foote's thornless blackberry still on site. We have historic roses, both here and being preserved privately in the greenhouse of a woman who is a rose gardener here in the county. So there is a lot of history. We have a couple of orchards with that are still bearing fruit. We have pears, pomegranates, figs, olives, chestnuts, walnuts. There are more. The grounds of this house are historic and just as important. And part of our mission will be to revive these gardens and to tell the story of these plants and of the horticultural history of this community.
Oh, wow. There's still quite a bit of construction work going on, and we can see what's under construction and some of the work that has been done, like the ceiling. So
actually, it's more destruction right now, taking some of the old stuff down that was here during the school, because they used it, built separate rooms, and we've taken...
So this was a school at one time,
yes.
Years ago. Okay.
Yeah. And for not so good kids.
I see. And it looks like vandalism, too, throughout the years. And the rooms have a lot of destruction.
After the school closed down, it just became a hangout for the drug users.
Unfortunate.
And a lot of the other people just party, you know. And they'd pull things off and burnt some of the wood. And
oh my gosh! But this is interesting. Very unique vaulted ceiling. That's some of the efforts that you've done.
Yeah, we had to take the ceiling out of here because it was falling down. It was concrete wire construction that the architect, it was the first time it was used in a building.
Interesting, the wire and concrete for the walls and the ceiling.
and the ceiling.
She was a pioneer, wasn't she?
She was a real pioneer. She did.
Purse.
Yeah.
Well, there's we still consider.
This will be the last part of the building we'll redo. You know, we want to get the downstairs
Right.
completely done, and then we can start on this. That'll
So
be years away.
That'll be years. All right, it's a work in progress.
It'll be 100 years old before we.
And
get
still
there.
the board president, I'm sure. You're going to be reelected every year. So right now, the upstairs is off limits to people coming in for the public and touring.
It's just too hazardous to let people walk through it.
Right, I can see
As
that.
you see stuff we've got piled around.
Right. Well, let's go back downstairs and take one last look at the beautiful grounds as we close out the program. We're getting ready to close out the program and found a beautiful, picturesque spot, as there's so many on this property, to close out and learn a little bit more on how the public can come here and view the house and how you can help donate. And Rose, tell us about that good information.
Well, we do have a membership program now, and members are really important in doing the big work that we need to do to make the site more and more usable and keep the momentum going. Yeah. We do have the Growers Market every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's a great opportunity for people to come out and grab some lunch or some groceries and enjoy the site. We have a lot of activities out here, music and events for kids.
So on the Growers Market, the house is open so people can walk in.
And docents are available to answer questions. And it's really an open house opportunity every weekend. But membership is going to be more important as we go forward. We're going to have our first member event this October. So members get a chance to come out and meet the board and talk to us about what our plans are. So we really would like the community to consider joining us to become a member to really put this mission in high gear so we can start moving forward.
And are there membership levels and also contributions that people can make? Is that through the website?
Absolutely. And you know, we're flexible. This is a little town. If you want to be a member, just give us a call. And we also love our volunteers. We have 10,000 volunteer hours to date in this house and on these grounds, and the community has been so supportive in that way. So we just want people to come and meet us and join this cause.
I think once people come here, they're just like me. There's so much to learn. We couldn't even get everything in the half-hour program. And Peggy, you've been with the Conservancy for a while. You've been at this for a while. You got the historical designation. So much of your efforts, and now Rose's big dedication and commitment to. People can come on board.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people, and you know, even gifts. I mean, we get artwork, we get windows. People. We'll be putting together sort of an ask sheet about what our authentic doors really are. They're available. They're secondhand somewhere, and start looking at that. The doors upstairs. You know, we can match the ones that we already have, and have the photographs and say this is what we're looking for. And you'd be surprised what people have, and it can just wend its way out here. I think.
And when you ask about it, people go, oh, you know, they don't think about what they have until it's thrown out there. So you're right. There is a lot that can be repurposed, and people have underneath their homes they've forgotten about.
Yeah, and it's it's an event. Potential event site. The grounds can be used for lots of events, and that's what we're looking at in the future. Dinner parties, luncheons, meetings, all kinds of things can happen. And we have a watercolor class out here next month. If you want to take a watercolor class the second week of September, that's happening. I have the brochures in the house.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. And we get those plein air artists out here. We're working really hard on those. They're going to be out here, and that's fun.
And you don't have to go to Europe to do it. It's right here in Nevada County at the North Star House. So Peggy Levine, thank you so much. And Rose Fonder, thank you so much. An unbelievable resource and gem right here in our backyard, part of the gold mine history. So for more information, you can go to the website, which is
NorthstarConservancy.org.
There you go. I knew somebody had it right. All right, until next time, thank you for joining us on Nevada County Snapshots. Come out to the Growers Market, too, on Saturday, and take a look at this house.
Back there, and then they developed that courtyard, which was originally the kitchen side, but they developed that courtyard with a pond. I mean, and they had plants out there. And I think once the cars were here, they started their job. And then Mary Halleck Foote was an artist and an illustrator, illustrated the West, all the places she went, wrote about what she saw. I mean, we have a quote unquote silly quote gold mine in California history
On many different levels. And this is a true gem.
So the heritage of this house, she was an art author and an illustrator, he was a mining engineer. So the heritage of the house is both worlds. And also it was and we talked about the plant thing. Oh, I have to get notes on the plants out of my... The application went through. It was a wonderful... We went to Polly and I went to an event in Sacramento to fully, a theater kind of event to say you've got it, and it steps up our potential for state and federal interest and involvement, and helps us tell the story, and it makes it mean more.
Cheryl, thank you for coming, and we appreciate you here, and I hope a lot of people like seeing this. I think we'll get more people out here because it's a wonderful place.
Not to
I work with severely handicapped 18 to 22-year-olds. I can understand the fear and the struggles they go through.
Christy Klontz struggles with reading and writing.
My dad would do things like hand me a dictionary, and because I couldn't spell, and he'd say, "Here, find the word." And I would tell him, "Dad, I can't find the word. They all look the same." I remember in elementary school being sick, not able to go to school. I would get a stomach ache or make up excuses why I couldn't go to school. I was officially diagnosed when I was 40 years old that I'm dyslexic and I have a visual processing disorder. That was actually really a relief that because all your life you hear, "Oh, you're just lazy, you're not trying hard enough." He apologized to me.